Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Other Side of Me, Memoir of a Bipolar Mind, by Julie Kraft, narrated by Sarah Zimmerman. I used to think you had to be special for God to use you, but now I know you simply need to say yes. Bob Goff. Yes, yours truly. Forward, not to be confused with fast forward. Bribery and an airbag. If you're not my biased birth mother or a heavily bribed best friend, please don't stop listening. At least not for a few more seconds and sentences. Not only does it mean this book is now a bona fide published work out in the real world, it means you're holding a modern-day miracle. Trust me, if you had any idea how easily distracted I can be, a fly in the neighborhood will do it. How low my insecurities often drag me, or the disarray my bipolar disorder can bring to my state of being, then you'd only be starting to grasp how incredible it is this book was finished. The temptation to abandon my literary efforts was constant. I resisted. Instead of giving in and giving up, I logged off social media, cast aside self-doubt, fought through, and finished. Write the book you want to read. Such great advice, and I've tried to follow it. As a non-reader, easily distracted, remember, I knew any book I'd be capable of reading, one that could keep my attention in its entirety in chronological order, might possibly leave anyone else hanging on for dear life, wishing it had been sold with a crash helmet and airbag in its binding. Any such book would hopefully appeal to others and never be in danger of being tucked away for a rainy day. So I've done my very best to write that book and create a roller coaster, heartbreaking, head-spinning, side-splitting, eye-opening, a literary ride to be remembered. Buckle up and brace yourself. A mugshot and some Barbie dolls. From the outside looking in, or from a quick glance at my social media mugshot, it might seem as if I have my act together. From a far distance, others could be duped into thinking I've a Ken and Barbie marriage, 3 well-mannered kids, and that my teeth-whitening strips are working. Losing a set of car keys or a game of Monopoly might appear to be the hardest knocks life has ever thrown my way. But that couldn't be further from reality. My headshot was snapped with the help of a tripod and a self-timer as I sat alone, smiling at a pile of dirty laundry. I was overwhelmed that afternoon, too anxious to leave my home, and all because of a dose of medication I'd forgotten to take. The only things that helped to brighten my mood and coffee-stained smile that day were the miraculous capabilities of my photo editing software. The truth is, I don't have it all together. Not at all. I could have easily kept my reality under wraps for the rest of my life. But keeping my struggles hidden behind an airbrushed smile would have only perpetuated the myth that I had all my ducks in a row. Or even worse, made others feel as if they didn't. In shame, for decades, I kept this part of me hidden from everyone except those closest to me. The people I was convinced would never out me, betray me, or leave me. I kept everything behind closed doors. Until now. Every story has 2 sides. This is the other side of me. Opening up to others is always a risk. There is the terrifying fear that others won't handle us with care or guard our vulnerabilities with the fierceness they deserve. The moment that you feel that just possibly you're walking down the street naked, exposing too much of your heart and your mind and what exists on the inside, showing too much of yourself, that's the moment you may be starting to get it right. Neil Gaiman. Setting the stage. Running in rush hour naked. Metaphorically speaking, for me, what I'm about to do is the equivalent of running down a highway in rush hour naked. So here goes nothing. Or absolutely everything. I have bipolar disorder. Yes, that is the official diagnosis the guys in the white coats have given me, and yes, I believe them. Could I have my clothes back, please? Fully aware of the perceptions of mental illness, I know that even whispering the word bipolar sends some people and insurance companies running for the hills. Unfortunately, the media often portrays us folk as crazy-eyed maniacs, the ones who disappear for days on end, binging on sex, drugs, and alcohol, and impulsively spending insane amounts of money we don't have. We become the headline story on the 6 o'clock news and front page of the local newspaper for all the wrong reasons. We are extremely effective at satisfying others' insatiable appetites for any train wreck that isn't their own. Crazy sells. Unfortunately, telling someone that I have bipolar disorder isn't easy. It's not the sort of news I can subtly slide into supermarket small talk or sidewalk conversation. Until writing this book, I'd only stripped down and divulged my diagnosis to a select few, most of whom, thank goodness, reacted to my revelation in the best possible ways, as if they were only hearing of bad gas or a recurring rash. They've always viewed my disorder as something I have, not something I am. It has never defined our relationships or me. To them, I've always been more than my mental illness, so much more. The problem is, for so many years, I didn't share any of those same sentiments. I desperately wanted to believe what my friends believed and see myself through their eyes, but was so far from being able to do so. I knew of the fear and judgment of mental illness and was aware that stigma and stereotypes existed. And not only did they exist, they thrived in my very own mind. Yes, I shamefully admit that I, too, viewed bipolarity as something to be steered clear of and kept at a distance. That is, until I heard the words, "You have bipolar disorder." In that moment, everything changed. All of my negative perceptions suddenly shifted in my direction. The spotlight was on me, and without welcome. Getting to a place of accepting and embracing my disorder wouldn't be easy or happen overnight. Yes, I shamefully admit that I too viewed bipolarity as something to be steered clear of and kept at a distance. Let's get technical. For those listening to this book for more than just the jaw-dropping juicy parts. Before I write any further, it's probably a good idea to give an amateur overview of my disorder. Please know I am not a neurologist, psychiatrist, or doctor, nor do I desire to be. And this book is not an encyclopedia, medical journal, or diagnostic manual, so please don't look to it as one. Unbelievably, until writing this memoir, I was intentionally unaware of the ins and outs of my condition. Pinning and posting online always took priority over any searches of my disorder. Many might think I'm ignorant and irresponsible for not studying every angle of my ailment, for not learning about neurotransmitters and their purposes before starting to pop my little pink pills. So, for the sake of appearing educated and somewhat self-aware, allow me to toss in a few facts and explore the more technical side of things. Here is my best attempt to educate. Bipolar disorder, previously known as manic depressive disorder until its name change in 1980, is a serious mental illness that brings unpredictable and extreme changes in mood, behavior, and energy. These shifts range from depression to mania, the depths of despair, up to cloud number 9 and everywhere in between. Whether during a single day or over the course of years, these swings extend far beyond what would be considered normal, disrupting life at best and threatening to destroy everything and everyone in their path at worst. There are different types: bipolar 1, 2, mixed state, rapid cycling, and cyclothymia, each with different levels of severity and their own distinctive features. Depressive and manic episodes are some of the glaring signs of this condition, and exploring them in detail can help nail down a diagnosis. Unfortunately, bipolar disorder can present a series of symptoms which fit the mold of other mood disorders. The average person receives a misdiagnosis or four before being given an accurate assessment. There are many different treatment paths to explore: medication, psychotherapy, electrotherapy, counseling, lifestyle changes, and more. For those who opt to go the medicinal route, cocktails of methodically mixed medications, mood regulators, antipsychotics, and antidepressants are often prescribed in the hope of stabilizing moods and relationships. Some folks have great success out of the gate, while others need to explore different options, tweak dosages, and wade through a sea of side effects. But is bipolar a disease or a disorder? Is it a chemical imbalance or just the sign of an unsettled upbringing? What is the real cause, and is there a cure? Question: is it all in my head? Is there something going on or off in my brain? A chemical misfiring of sorts that can't be fixed by a prayer, bouquet of roses, or passionate kiss? Well, the fact that brain-tweaking medications have been proven to help stabilize moods, including my own, would strongly suggest the answer is yes. Answer: experts believe bipolar disorder is partly caused by an underlying problem with specific brain circuits and the balance of brain chemicals called neurotransmitters. The brain chemical serotonin is connected to many body functions such as sleep, wakefulness, eating, sexual activity, impulsivity, learning, and memory. Researchers believe that abnormal functioning of brain circuits that involve serotonin as a chemical messenger contribute to mood disorders such as depression and bipolar disorder. Question: is there a genetic predisposition to mental illness and bipolar disorder? Did I come by my condition honestly, hereditarily from my grandpa or great-aunt B, or have I simply struck out and lost a random genetic lottery? In my family, there are indeed traces of mental illness. No need to name names or dust off the family photo albums, but yes, if you climbed up my family tree, you would find some depression and dementia instead of a bird's nest or bananas. Answer: studies at Stanford University that explored the genetic connection of bipolar disorder found that children with one biological parent with bipolar 1 or bipolar 2 disorder have an increased likelihood of getting bipolar disorder. In this study, researchers reported that 51% of the bipolar offspring had a psychiatric disorder, most commonly major depression, dysthymia, low-grade chronic depression, bipolar disorder, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. Question: nature versus nurture. Can bipolar disorder be brought on by our environments and experiences, triggered by traumatic events or stressful situations, whether it's abuse, an abnormal childhood, bullying, or a bad breakup? Answer: along with a genetic link to bipolar disorder, research shows that children of bipolar parents are often surrounded by significant environmental stressors. This may include living with a parent who has a tendency toward mood swings, alcohol or substance abuse, financial and sexual indiscretions, and hospitalizations. Environmental stressors also play a role in triggering bipolar episodes in those who are genetically predisposed. For example, children growing up in bipolar families may live with a parent who lacks control of moods or emotions. Some children may live with constant verbal or even physical abuse if the bipolar parent is not medicated or is using alcohol or drugs. It has been known for some time that genetic history is a risk factor in the development and expression of bipolar disorder, yet there has been very little concrete information published on the specific genes involved. This information, together with a fuller understanding of other risk factors, which include stress, substance abuse, and life circumstances, will help clinicians to understand the condition more fully and to treat it more effectively. Much work is required in this respect. Clear as mud. My head hurts. I'm not sure about you, but I'm still confused. So many questions and not enough concrete answers. It's not black and white. There is no gene to test for or blood test to take. Out of millions of diagnoses, no two are alike. Onset signs and symptoms are as unique as each person, and one need look no further than the plethora of treatment options to know that there isn't one specific pill that offers an instant fix for all. What works best for Rhonda up the road is guaranteed to be different from what helps Wayne down the lane, as different as their fashion sense and favorite foods. We all have different stories. Hurts, heartaches, successes, failures, and fears that have contributed to who we are, what we do, and why. Reflecting on our life experiences can shed light and offer explanations. It's just as important to ask what happened instead of just what's wrong. And what about me? I thought you'd never ask. I guess it's that time to put me under the microscope. Let's take a closer look, dissect, and discover what's happened in my life up until now. What's wrong? What happened? You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Unknown. No pressure. An awkward introduction. Nice to meet you. I'm mentally ill, but medicated. And by the way, my name is Julie. Can you imagine kicking off a job interview with that fully loaded introduction? Never, not in a million years. Disclosing a mental illness isn't the first or 50th thing I would ever do in a meet and greet. Nor would I recommend mentioning irritable bowel syndrome on a blind date. In my mind, those are both small parts of any person's pie, mere slivers, and certainly not the pieces to be served up first. If you're lunching with a coworker who's got high cholesterol, hopefully their fatty food intake isn't the first or last topic of conversation. By the same token, if I spend the day with a friend, I hope they haven't braced themselves beforehand, wondering if I'm running off the rails. I pray they are planning to meet with me, not my disorder, regardless of my mood, happy, sad, angry, or over the moon. In my opinion, all of these emotions are the result of being human, not of being bipolar. Despite the first, or 50th, of course, impressions I might give, I am more than assaults the eye and ear, more than my bleached blonde hair, haphazard behavior, and high-pitched commentary. My waters run deep and thoughts many, but rarely do I trust others enough to let them dive into my world. However, it would appear as if today is your lucky day. So without further ado, let's take the plunge. Pun absolutely intended, and reintroduce ourselves. Hi, my name is Julie. Some might call me a misfit, dramatic, passionate, quirky, eccentric, a square peg living in a world full of round holes. I would have to agree. That's definitely me. I am that gal who has unknowingly walked at full speed into men's washrooms and then emerged trailing toilet paper from my soles, both of them. I'm also the person who's poured coffee into my breakfast cereal without a second thought, a surefire way to improve the efficiency of my morning routine by taking me from half asleep to wide awake before the last spoonful. And this is assuming, of course, that the coffee pot was parked in its proper percolating spot in the first place. On the many days it wasn't, puddles of coffee pooled on the counter and flowed to the floor, giving my cabinets an instant, antiqued look. If you're going to be weird, be confident about it. Unknown. My mind is usually 18 steps ahead of the already record-breaking speeds of my body parts, leading to uncoordinated mishaps wherever I go. I am constantly unhooking my snagged sweaters and stretched-out purse straps from door handles around town. While dining in restaurants, I've often mentally left the establishment and embarked on my next mission before even ordering my meal. Speaking of eating, despite my mouth being lion-sized and a dentist's dream, food may or may not make it inside due to my continuous gum flapping. I can always count on a few spoonfuls of grub landing in the folds of my neck, scarf, or at the bottom of my purse. Drinking is just as difficult. My lips often fall a few feet short of connecting with the rim of my coffee cup, enough of a distance to make all the difference, and send coffee cascading down the front of my sure-to-be white silk shirt. Now, when it comes to me operating any amount of wheels, it's a very dangerous undertaking. As a tween, a casual summer bike ride nearly turned deadly as I flew into a friend's driveway and slammed on the brake. That's right, the brake, singular, as in only one of two. Unfortunately for me, it was the front one. The next thing I remember is flying over the handlebars, flipping through the air, and landing in a crumpled heap on the ground. My unintentional stunt was undoubtedly quite the sight to see. To this day, my friend is baffled by my ability to bounce back, brush myself off, and follow her inside for some banana bread. In later years, I learned to drive and often borrowed my parents' car. It wasn't a Rolls-Royce, but it was reliable, always taking our family from point A to point B and back. That is, until the day it suspiciously needed a major mechanical overhaul. Seemingly out of the blue, the family car went from being in perfect working order to having a trash transmission. Overnight. For months afterward, my dad shook his head and asked if I had any inkling as to why the car had suddenly let us down. I knew exactly why. I was sitting on a secret, but nothing could have broken my silence and made me confess. Until now. I had been driving a few days before, cruising down the street at a good clip, and decided to change lanes. Unfortunately, on that day, my neck muscles proved to have a direct connection to my appendages. As I swiveled my head to shoulder check, my arm raised upward at high speed, making me an enthusiastic member of a marching band instead of a motorist. On its way up, my limb collided with the gear shift, taking the vehicle from drive to park in an instant, from full speed to fully stopped in seconds. And there I sat, in the center lane, wide-eyed and whiplashed, wondering what the heck had happened and unsure of what to do next. Adding insult to my neck injury, a symphony of honks soon serenaded me. Unbelievably, I was able to hit the gas and head home, completely unaware of the irreversible damage I had just caused under the hood. Dad, forgive me. Over the years, parking a vehicle has proven just as challenging. I've often made a spectacle of myself, trying to parallel park in 20-foot spaces, breaking into a feverish sweat from the steering wheel workout and added pressure of amused onlookers. The scene has always ended with me abandoning my efforts and then circling the block for days in hopes of finding a cruise ship-sized opening to glide into bow first. But have I always danced to the beat of a different drum? What kinds of impressions did I make as a small child, in the schoolyard, the neighborhood, and my own shag-carpeted living room? Let's go back a few decades and find out. Growing up, a little girl and a lot of chaos. Looking back at my early years, were there any signs or symptoms of what was to come? In hindsight, there were many. Some were even noticed, but only for what they seemed on the surface. In the 1980s, the terms manic-depressive and bipolar were rarely heard outside the walls of mental institutions. They were diagnoses used for adults, not for kids who threw temper tantrums or showed wild creativity in the classroom. My mom recently told me I was always a bit of a brat. Strong-willed, spirited, a hot-headed handful, and by far the most difficult to raise of her 4 children. Thanks, Mom. Even as a little girl, I was out of control, yet cunningly in control at the same time. I often executed the most impressive games of hide-and-seek, just minutes before doctor's appointments I had no intention of attending. Sometimes I would wedge myself into the 6-inch opening between our floral sofa and pea-soup-colored carpet, and other times I'd claw my way to the tops of neighbors' trees. It worked. After frantic and unfruitful searches, my mom would be forced to admit defeat and reschedule my medical meetings. The chaos that surrounded me spread far beyond the walls of my home and branches of nearby trees. On one occasion, I allowed a stick of bubble gum to cause quite a scene and ruin an entire school day. Chewing on anything in my first-grade classroom other than the tip of a pencil was strictly forbidden for fear it would land on the newly installed, pea-soup-colored, of course, carpet. Regardless of the rule, in a daring act of youthful rebellion, I popped a piece of gum into my mouth. A few hours and a spelling test later, as I stood in line for the pencil sharpener, the stale and sticky substance leaped out of my mouth and onto the floor. Horrified, my first instinct was to cover it up, at full force with my foot. There was no doubt the wad had been instantly embedded, was incapable of being extracted, and needed to be hidden at all cost. Dumbfounded, my teacher begged me to take my seat. Her efforts were in vain. It soon became clear I was prepared to stand in that spot for the rest of my life. The situation escalated. I soon found the principal glaring down at me, pleading for an explanation of my schoolroom standoff. In a last-ditch attempt to make me move, my mother was summoned. With a pregnant belly in front and my baby sister lagging behind, she walked a mile to the school, uphill, barefoot in the snow, and issued me an ultimatum. It worked. My punishment? I can't remember, so it must have been minimal. My peculiar behavior had likely left everyone at a loss for words and disciplinary action. By the time I turned 8, my teachers were bolting up and taking notice. I was definitely different, always thinking outside the box, and running circles around my classmates in the academic department. Much to my delight, appropriate measures were taken to keep my mind stretched. I was shipped off to do 2-week stints at a nearby school for whiz kids. We sang songs in foreign languages, wrote novels, and completed assignments suited for White House interns. I loved every minute of it, the creative freedom and confidence it gave me. I would always return to normal life, energized to change the world. I created newspapers, drama productions, and student councils, crowning myself as chief editor, lead actress, and president before auditions had been held or votes even cast. It was no surprise that I found myself at the mercy of my friends' jealousies. They gave me the evil eye and called me names, teacher's pet, and smarty pants, but all the while I heard them saying something else. Their insults all screamed that they too wanted to be given child prodigy status, an educational holiday, and some added attention. The big city and some fraud. As my teen years approached, raging hormones began to wreak havoc on my physical appearance and emotional stability. To add insult to injury, without warning, my parents pulled the rug out from under me and moved our family to the other side of the country. I was uprooted from the safety of a small town and planted in the heart of the big city, stolen far from friends and all familiarity. I was suddenly the new kid in town and in the schoolyard, recognized for my inability to fit in instead of my academic achievements. Feeling awkward and out of place, I withdrew and lost all confidence. Instead of living outside the box, I crawled deep inside. My wardrobe didn't help. With my family's every last dime having been spent on buying a house, there was nothing left over for brand new clothes, let alone any from the local secondhand store. I knew my chances of gaining popularity with my peers, dressed in outdated duds, were slim to none. Desperate times called for desperate measures. I decided to take matters into my own hands by transforming a pair of cheap, knockoff sports shoes into designer footwear. All it took was a piece of paper, some colored pencils, and a little artistic talent. In an unbelievably bold and fraudulent move, I sketched a far more desirable brand label, cut it to size, and glued it on top of the no-name one. To this day, I'm not sure if anyone noticed my shoe status upgrade or the fact that it was a phony one, but I sure felt better about myself for a moment. That is, until it started to rain at recess. In an instant, my hopes of being catapulted into the cool crowd were washed away. Desperately trying to rebuild my reputation and reignite the fire she'd once seen within her little girl, my mom enrolled me in an academically advanced program and hoped for the best. It didn't work. Unfortunately, instead of giving me a creative outlet and confidence, it overloaded me with hours of extra homework. I dropped out. But little did I know, my fake footwear and lack of follow-through would soon prove to be the very least of my worries. They were only the tip of what would soon become a tumultuous teenage iceberg. Feeling awkward and out of place, I withdrew and lost all confidence. Instead of living outside the box, I crawled deep inside. A monobrow and a first marriage. To describe my high school years as just an awkward phase would be a gross understatement. With no
Sample complete. Ready to continue?